All right. I think we are ready to go. All right. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'd like to acknowledge that the Wilfrid Laurier University Students' Union operates on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee people. We commit to a mode of operation that is not in conflict with them. I have received multiple regrets for today's meeting. They have been received very late, not according to the board member's code of conduct. So I'd like to kindly remind directors they must submit their regrets as soon as possible. It's very difficult to handle, to be able to coordinate a meeting when cancel last minute. Okay, are there any conflicts of interest to declare today? Okay, as I see none, we'll go into the adoption of the agenda. Can I get a motion that the board of directors adopt the agenda as presented? Please have a seat. Director Corey, seconded by Director Ellis, will move into.
Sorry, I just wanted to propose an amendment to it.
Okay, your amendment?
I think given kind of the absences tonight, it might be worth pushing the board meeting schedule for the winter term until sometime in the winter term.
So I agree with you. I think that we should push the discussion to setting the winter schedule soon. I'll have the governance coordinator, when possible, send out a link for what your schedule is like for the winter semester. Please respond to that as soon as possible so that I can send out an email broadcast wide and then make sure that it works for everyone. Director Spitzer, do you have an amendment? You have your hand up?
Oh, no, sorry, I was just proposing to whatever.
Okay, so can I get a seconder on the proposed amendment? Director Baldwin will move on to voting for the amendment. Any opposition? Any abstention? All those in favor? Director Spitzer, you could just say yes. Okay, that works too. The motion passes 0-0 to 8. We'll now vote on the amended motion. Any further discussion on the amended motion? Sure. Okay, as I see none, we'll now move into voting. Any opposition? Abstention? All those in favor? Motion passes 0-0 to 8. We will now move on to the consent agenda. Can I get a motion that the board of directors adopt the consent agenda as presented? Director Ellis, followed by Director Russo. Discussion on the matter. No discussion, Director Corey? Okay, as I see none, we will now move into voting. Any opposition? Abstentions? All those in favor? Motion carried unanimously. Approval of the November 2023 board meeting minutes. Can I get a motion on Director Baldwin, Vice Chair Rubinoff? Any discussion on the minutes? Nothing? Okay. We'll now move into voting. Any opposition? Abstentions? All those in favor? Director Spitzer? Director Spazzeri, you vote? Yeah, okay, perfect. The motion passes 0-8. On to comments from the chair of the board and CGO. Thank you, thank you, directors, for showing up to the last, most probably the last meeting of the fall semester. I believe you've all done a wonderful job. I appreciate all of the feedback that you've shared with me during my performance review and in the performance review done at the core. I'd like to thank you for your motion of confidence. My simple comment is please respond to your emails. This is the last time I want to talk about this. It is very difficult to be able to manage the board if people don't respond in a timely manner. So a kind request, answer the emails and CC the governance coordinator. Any comments or questions for the chair of the board and CGO? Okay, as I see none, on to the comments from the president and CEO.
Thank you. I don't have too much, obviously, given that it's the end of the year. But we're essentially just wrapping up things for the term and planning for next term. So with programming and other things that we have going on next semester on both campuses. I'm working on a few agreements with the different parties of the university with the executive director. So the operating procedures agreement, the student affairs advisory agreement, just working on some of that fun stuff in the background. More recently, the Greek Life MOU has been signed between myself and the president of Greek Life.
Congratulations.
Which is exciting. Starting next semester, meeting once a month. So 4 times a semester. We had a very productive meeting last week, which was good. I also recently attended a Milton campus visit, which was really interesting to see the plans for that campus. And I also attended the Student Advocacy Conference in Toronto at Queen's Park with my Vice President of Government and Stakeholder Relations. And that's about it. I guess the only other thing that you guys might be interested in is, I also did 2 presentations this week on generative artificial intelligence and student use in the classroom, which is kind of interesting, something a little bit different than I'm used to. And that's about it. If there's any questions also about anything that Phil would have spoken about, I can try to answer them. If not, we can circle back when he is back in January from his South American trip.
All right, I'll open the floor up. Any questions for the president and CEO? Director
What's the
Wilson?
status on the Milton campus, or what's going on there?
Do you mean from like an academic standpoint or like a student experience standpoint or everything?
Just, both.
Okay, so high level, they're opening September with 2 programs, comp science psych. They're gonna cap so that they can only accept a certain amount of students, so they don't like overwhelm themselves. It's gonna be very much like a learning curve in the first year. We're gonna work really closely with student affairs, so we're not necessarily gonna have an office there, but we're gonna work with student affairs and the roles that they're gonna have on that campus and kind of streamline some programming through there. There won't be a ton of students on the first year. It's gonna be very small. And the way it's almost like cohorts, like all of the students will be in classes at the same time, which will be really interesting. But yeah, it's very much a learning year, and it won't be in my year because it'll be in whoever the next president is when that will start. So it's very much early stages, but we're working really closely with student affairs on what that looks like for us.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Vice Chair?
Because back onto the Milton comment, because it's in its infancy, what would students' involvement look like in Milton?
Yeah.
The first years.
So we're kind of exploring like if we want to do something like orientation wise, like orientation week on like a smaller scale, obviously like no concerts, like anything like that. But if we want to have some sort of presence there, and then throughout the year, we might try to do some programming, but like I said, streamline it through student affairs, so partner with them. So I don't think we'll have a huge presence in the first year, but as that campus grows, then we'll have more of a presence as like the student body grows.
Director Spazzeri dropped off the call.
He said something in the chat.
Yeah, he said he just has to step out, but I don't think we have quorum anymore.
What?
You can continue with the questions.
Okay, we'll continue with the questions any other questions for the president and CEO? I have a couple questions for you. The first, around around Milton, what are we doing to prepare, like, from a fiscal perspective to project what the expenses are gonna look like for the student union next year as we try to ramp up the student union activity there? What does that look like?
Yeah, I don't have a super definite answer, but the answer I do have is that we won't have a ton of expenses next year because we aren't planning on doing too much. Student Affairs has really taken the lead on like the student programming side of it. They're planning on hiring some positions that will be based in Milton.
Okay.
Obviously, we don't wanna like duplicate efforts or step on anyone's toes in that sense. So from an expenses standpoint, we won't have many expenses at all in the first year of Milton. But I can follow up with like a more concrete answer, but that's, yeah, we shouldn't have too many expenses in the first year.
The second question is around the use of student services. I'm sure you know, we've heard as multiple directors have heard some complaints about the shared facilities, but also the shared services between Conestoga and Woolloomooloo students. So my question to you is, are we looking at what sorts of services are almost like disproportionately funded by Woolloomooloo fees? That is also getting a disproportionate use from Conestoga College students. And then the second part of the question is, how are we gonna remedy that? Like, are we engaging with that student association to be able to include them as part of those fees so that they pay and access our services equitably? So that, you know, Woolloomooloo students aren't subsidizing Conestoga College students.
Yeah, kind of hard to give a concrete answer, but that has been something that we've been thinking about recently that we want to look more into. We do understand that the Brantford campus is in a really unique situation in like their engagement with the Conestoga students there. That's also something that we can't work on alone because it very much involves student affairs because they operate the games lounge and stuff like that on the Brantford campus. So that's not something we can really tackle alone. We would have to do it in tandem with them. So I can, like, that is something that's top of mind for us and diving into what that looks like and how we can grow that partnership with Conestoga. So not something I can answer too concrete right now on what our plan is going forward, but definitely something that's top of mind for us and we'll continue to look into in the future.
Yeah, if you could give the board a brief maybe by the second meeting in January, that would be appreciated so that we can kind of figure out like where is the disproportionate use there, and then how can we either safeguard to make sure that the Woolloomooloo students who are paying for these services get access to these services first and foremost. But then also in the ideal world, we have Conestoga, their student association as part, we can create some sort of agreement and make sure that, you know, they're paying their fair share and then they can access these services. The last question that I have for you and maybe to Director Muller would be around the Greek Life MOU. Did that not need any board oversight and signature?
No, it's just a memorandum of understanding, so it
Would-
doesn't,
Would we be able to get a copy to the board directors?
yeah, we can submit it to the board for information.
Yeah, if you can submit it to the board for information purposes, that would be great. I'd appreciate that in the first meeting of January. I think that's it. We're now waiting for,
So what I might recommend is, because we don't have quorum, Tony's, Wilf's consult is just for information purposes, so you can proceed with that, while we wait to see if we get Duncan back.
yeah,
That way Tony can also
Yeah.
jump out after he's done.
yeah, so, we don't need to vote on a motion to change the agenda, like chronology, right?
I mean, we can't right now, so we can just.
Okay, so yeah, the vice chair will reach out to Director Spiteri and then, I invite Director Massey to present to the board.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. So I won't take up too much of everyone's time because tonight's conversation is designed to be just kind of very high level conceptual and really giving an opportunity for the board to, sorry, one of my dogs is forcing their way into the room. And if you hear my child crying, it's bedtime around our house right now. So there's lots of activity going on. Anyways, the organization has been working with facilities asset management with the university, as well as a third-party consulting agency. MSS is their name, And we've been working on kind of a refresh of what the Wolf's restaurant and lounge looks like. So what we wanted to do today was kind of present some very preliminary, very high level floor plan idea and showcase just some subtle changes that have been proposed to be made to the general layout of the restaurant. So I need to stress that this conversation is not necessarily about operations or, you know, restaurant deployment, that kind of stuff. This is merely just to give the board an indication of that project moving forward and to see some of the proposed changes that this consulting agency is looking to move forward with. We're obviously working with our hospitality team and the rest of the student executive to gain the input within usage and operational based work and those types of things. So tonight's focus is really just to try and get an understanding and an opportunity from the board to give some feedback on what is the general purpose of this space from the board's interpretation, and then a question or an opportunity to discuss a particular priority associated with washrooms. So is there any general questions before I attempt to vamp and share my screen?
Any questions for Director Massey? Okay, as I see none, please proceed.
Perfect. So just as everybody else does, I'm going to vamp while I share my screen. And I'll rely on, let's see. Can you see the floor plan here?
Yes.
You're all good.
Wonderful. Okay, so for those that are looking to kind of orient themselves, and if anybody has trouble or wants me to zoom in, I can do that too. This is the general entrance of where the restaurant currently exists. So this would be kind of your walk of fame. Your hawk would be here. Takeout would be here. And generally speaking, what we've seen is kind of a bit of a revamped layout of the restaurant. So you'll notice some big changes around the bar area, some general changes to some private spaces or some bookable spaces within the dining room. So you'll notice, you know, the closed off room in the current corner where some of the equipment is being stored is actually going to be opened up and turned into open dining room space, an extension of that dining room space, and then we would be effectively building in this VIP area, effectively, or bookable room in the far corner where we've got kind of that lounge space with the curtains and whatnot. With some changes to the kitchen, obviously, we're working with our hospitality team on what those, you know, wish lists look like and whatnot. But for all intents and purposes, the function of the space would remain the same. It would be really just a refresh and an update as to what student interactions would look like. So again, for the consideration of the board, what we wanted to do was let you folks get a general idea and see what we're talking about here. And for you folks to think about is really just what is the purpose of Wilf's as a restaurant? You know, what are students kind of using this space for? And does that need to be updated? Those types of things is where President Spendler and the rest of the hospitalities teams are working to kind of gauge user group activity, that kind of stuff. So first kind of question is to think about that. And then one consideration that's been pretty prevalent in conversations and feedback has been around the washroom situation. So for those familiar with the Waterloo campus and the 2-4 lounge renovations that were done a few years ago, there was a considerable amount of construction done around the washrooms to prioritize more of a gender neutral opportunity in that space. And that's been a pretty heavy consideration from our executive team and from the hospitality team as well. So we wanted to let the board get an opportunity to kind of weigh in on that and indicate a priority as well, so that we can present a well-rounded set of opinions back to the consulting agency so that they can work with their designers to maybe update some of these things. Because you'll notice some changes obviously proposed to the general washroom space and restaurant space in general. So kind of leave that open. That's all that I really needed to kind of get out to you all. If there's any questions or concerns or comments that anybody would like me to kind of take aside from what I've already indicated, I'm happy to do that, but just figured to open the floor there for you all.
Just a quick question on the washrooms, just from memory. From the floor plan, it looks like you've moved the entrance and then there's the addition of a gender neutral or universal washroom. That's the extent of the changes, or am I missing something else?
That's the extent of what's been initially proposed. And then the consideration that we wanted to ask about was just a priority in general of, do we want to even indicate any sort of gendered washroom in this design, or would we like to propose back to those consultants to not necessarily scrap that idea, but focus more on the washroom setup that you would see in the 2-4 lounge setup in Waterloo and the FNCC?
Yeah, if anyone else has anything on that, I'm struggling to remember what the washrooms in the 2-4 lounge look like.
Effectively, you'd be looking at individual use washrooms that would have their own toilet, sink, mirror, soap, and paper towel dispenser with an individual door system. So think of, your stall kind of idea here, but they would be fully enclosed and basically individual water closet rooms for each individual toilet.
Okay. Are there any sort of I guess my question is, if we were indicating kind of the more closed off options, I would assume that looks a little bit more like a larger renovation project around kind of piping and everything, or is that already there?
What we would be doing is proposing that the architects and the engineers work with facilities asset management and the engineers to determine the viability of the addition or the redesign of that. So, for example, if you see here that they've proposed, 7, 8 toilets within this area right here, are we to assume that we can place 8 individual toilets, sinks, that kind of thing? That's the type of feedback that we would put back to the consulting group to say, like, basically you're in the right direction here, but we would like you to amend this particular area to incorporate the individual neutral washroom setup. This part of the process and project is very preliminary. We're still looking to get renderings of drawings and all that kind of stuff. This is merely just to give those consultants kind of an indication of where their focus needs to be and where the priority needs to be beyond. We're not talking about aesthetic or any of that kind of stuff right now.
Well, at the odds of the awkwardness of being the only one
Okay,
talking right now.
Director Massey, I have a quick question, 2 quick questions for you. The boardroom went muted for a bit for some reason. The first question is around the accessibility. Is there gonna be accessible washrooms as part of the renovation?
Yes, so far that has been a priority that the organization has identified to the consulting firm, as well as part of AODA compliance in general. These washrooms would need to be in order for us to open them. So yes, they will be.
The second question, which I guess also applies to the Belmont, which is in regards to the food offerings. Are we planning to change the food offerings, and do we plan to increase the availability of halal food at Wills?
At the moment, the context of this project or the scope of this project is merely on the physical delivery or the physical space itself. Restaurant operations, it would be a different conversation with the hospitality team. For the purposes of tonight, this is merely just for the.
Okay.
So this construction project, sorry to answer your question, is designed mostly to focus on the physical space. The operational deployment of menu items and food services in general would be a different conversation with hospitality services ongoing.
My last question is around like fiscal planning. What's just a ballpark? What are we looking at?
Are you asking financial consideration?
Yes. What's the ballpark budget for this, and what are we doing to make sure that we get the best value that we can for the student dollars that we're investing here?
Quite frankly, I don't know if the information pertaining to the budget of this project is public yet, for the purposes of this meeting is what I mean. But what I can tell you is that we the organization anyways, and in working with facilities asset management, has been working very closely with one another to ensure that the projects that are existing within the Fred Nichols Campus Center, this project being one of them, maintain a viability of fiscal responsibility, and obviously prudency associated with student dollar spending. So the priority for us is to basically say, here's the limit, spending within it kind of thing. But we can
Okay.
certainly work on getting some of that information if we have it available offline.
Okay, perfect, thank you. We will now move into, do we want to do the Belmont update, because it's like really quick? Director Mullen?
Yep, can do that.
Okay, let's do the Belmont update quickly.
So you're okay, you're done with Tony?
Yes, Director, Massey, thank you for your time and, your, duty for our organization. Pleasure working with you.
Appreciate the opportunity. Thanks, folks.
I just wanna also add, I think we have quorum again.
Yes, we do have quorum. So Director Mullen, you have the floor.
Yeah, so this is just an update on behalf of Phil. So if you remember a number of meetings ago, the bulk of the budget was released for spending on the Belmont. You asked to be kind of kept in the loop with some significant expenses. So we had proceeded with some painting of this space. And that it's under the 10K threshold, but close to it. So we wanted to just give you that as an FYI. So painting it around the $9,500 mark. It's with a consistent contractor that's been used previously, has gone out to tender. There was the additional quote was higher, so some of the plans were revised to bring that price down, but just wanted to bring that as part of that kind of continual update on the project. Everything is progressing according to the timeline that we have set out. So lots of optimism for it coming online next year.
Okay, perfect. My only question to that is, have we started looking, or is there a plan to deliver halal food options at the Belmont?
We don't have any further update than what we.
Okay, if you could please relay that to,
Yep.
to the team, that would be great for the next update. Okay, we will now move on to the referendum questions. We'll first start off with the first question, which was submitted earlier, which was the
Laureate.
the Laureate Athletics fee. Sorry, I forgot to pass that. Who will be presenting?
Yeah, so I can just give first a little just intro into the conversation. So every year, the Students' Union opens up referendum questions for sponsorship from the board of directors. So how that process works is we have a call for referendum questions, which goes live in mid to late October. That lays out kind of the requirements that questions have to have in relation to a variety of factors, primarily some directives that we have from the Ontario Ministry of Colleges and Universities. There are some guidelines that are in place for both how and what fees can be assessed, how universities and student organizations maintain transparency over those fees. So part of that process is the advertisement of the opportunity, submission deadline. We collect the fees in. The first step after the fees are collected is they go to what's called the non-tuition fee protocol committee. So that is a university level committee where there's representation from the Students' Union, the Graduate Student Association, and then various departments within the university who have roles in whether it's finance or fee assessment, the registrar's office, all of those types of things. So questions are vetted at that particular committee, and then they come to the board, and the board makes a decision about whether the fee itself meets the qualifications that we publish in the call for referendum questions, whether they are technically able to be assessed. So what that means is, do they contravene any university policies? Do they have the necessary clarity that they need? And then all fees are considered in relation to the total existing ancillary fee burden that exists for students, as well as making sure we're not duplicating existing levies or fees. So those are the kind of factors that you'll take into consideration when you consider whether or not you'll sponsor the two questions that we have today.
Okay.
And the first question is the Laurier Athletics and Recreations fees. So as you see in your package, the question is, do you support the creation of an athletics and recreation facilities fee to enhance the fitness, sport, and active extracurricular amenities on the Waterloo campus. Effective September 1st, 2024, this fee will be assessed at $95 per term, adjusted annually by the cost of recreation.
Okay.
So there were no notes from the non-tuition fee protocol committee about this particular fee.
It was
Uh,
carried.
Sorry?
The fee was.
Yeah, there was extensive and also extensive consultation with both the Students' Union and Graduate Student Association, because there's a parallel fee being asked of graduate students. So all students at Laurier will be asked this fee regardless of whether they're graduate or undergraduate fees, which is a particular.
In Waterloo.
In Waterloo, correct.
All right, I'll open this question up for discussion and questions. Director Corey.
Yeah, I know we've talked about this fee a decent amount, especially when athletics came in. Not necessarily kind of an issue of passage, but just something I wanted to highlight was the cost. And kind of, I know the implications going around with that cost, but I'm a little concerned about kind of whether or not it'll pass at current cost. Cause it's, what, 95 a term?
So that's not really kind of what's up for discussion by the board at this particular juncture. You're just assessing whether it meets the technical qualification for whether or not it can be asked, whether students, that's the referendum question will deal with whether students feel like it's too expensive or not. Essentially, what you're doing today is, does it meet the requirements that we have set out for sponsoring and putting it forward to the membership for a vote?
Okay. Director Muller, what are the direct technical requirements that we should know of in order for us to be able to make an informed vote?
Yep, so they're in the call for referendum questions, which is in the brief for the in your package on page 66, so in full, I can read them out. So referendum questions must include the purpose and rationale for the question, the cost of any associated fee, any inflationary costs and how they'll impact the fee, date of implementation, eligible voting members, fees intended to be compulsory, impact of the question on any previous referendum questions. So sometimes we'll see a fee that seeks to increase a pre-existing fee. That's when that comes into consideration. And then as well, questions are evaluated on the following principles. Questions can't violate Canadian laws, policies of the Wilfrid Laurier University, signed agreements, our letters patent, or the bylaws of the Students' Union. Questions must be crafted with the necessary clarity. Any proposed fees must adhere to the protocol agreement on non-tuition fees between the university, the Students' Union, and the Wilfrid Laurier University Graduate Students Association. So that's the non-tuition fee protocol committee that I mentioned earlier.
Right.
And then fees or programs established by referendum should not duplicate existing levies or services. And there must be a reasonable process available to administer any proposed fee. And then finally, any fee proposed will be considered in relation to the total existing ancillary fee burden.
Okay. So based on the criteria set above, it is my opinion that the first referendum question meets all of the criteria. Director Russo.
So did you say that grad students would also get charged a fee?
So they have their own referendum question. So the graduate students will be asked a referendum with this same question.
Okay, so this one's just for undergraduates.
Just for undergraduates, and then there's basically parallel process happening for undergraduate or for graduate students.
Okay.
In water.
Any further questions on referendum question 1? Okay, as I see none, I'll call it to a vote. Just give me a minute. Trying to pull up the. Can I get a motion that the board of directors support the creation of the athletics and recreation facilities fee to enhance the fitness sport and active extracurricular amenities on the Waterloo campus? Vice Chair Rubinoff, seconded by Director Corey. Any further comments or questions on this motion? Okay, as I see none, we'll move into voting. Any opposition to the motion? Any abstentions? All those in favor? The motion passes 0-0 to 8. And the recreation fee is endorsed. On to the second. fee,
Yes.
Which is the purported student support fee.
Yeah, so the second fee is the student support fee, which is to support the establishment of the opt-outable student support.ca fee of $25.45 per semester, which will provide all students with unlimited access to CALM, a top-rated mental health app proven to reduce anxiety and stress. Udemy, learn job skills through 21,000 plus courses and get certification for your resume. For Writing Aid, an app that helps revise all online writing with specialized tools for resumes and academic writing. Nimbus course specific tutoring mentorship programs, study groups, and 2,000 hours in free tutoring sessions for students in need. Active, an app that provides access to 6,000 plus customizable fitness programs. So in contrast to the athletics fee, organizationally, we are recommending that the board not adopt this fee. Primarily because we don't believe that it's eligible, doesn't meet the criteria laid out as mentioned. So this fee raised several concerns at the non-tuition fee protocol committee. There are often similar programs proposed that duplicate services on campus, but for our purposes, the particular concerns we have organizationally is that the proposal is in conflict with Laurier University policy. So in particular, the external information technology and cloud services policy 9.5 has some stipulations with respect to the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, as well as third-party technologies prior to being adopted are required to undertake a privacy and security impact assessment as part of the university, a process that we've gone through with some technology that we've undertaken. In addition, we believe that there is significant duplication with fees or with services that are already available to undergraduate students. And then just for context, a very similar fee was proposed to the board in 2021, and for much of the same rationale was not approved by the board at that time.
Okay, so this fee or a similar fee was rejected in 2021.
2021, that's right.
I'll start off with comments and questions from directors. Vice Chair Rubin.
What are some of the programs that is duplicated?
So if you look into the second page of the brief, you'll see there's an itemized list in comparison to the various apps proposed. But from our perspective, the kind of primary concern is we organizationally can't endorse something that is contrary to university policy, especially when it comes to something like the risks to privacy and security associated with third-party technology. So for us, that's the primary concern there is that we don't believe that it would be something that would be able to be properly incorporated and offered as a result of not knowing whether it would be compatible with our IT infrastructure.
Vice Chair Rubin, does that answer your question? I'll move on to Director Corey and then Director Evans. Director Corey.
Yeah, sorry, the camera doesn't like me.
Director first.
Just quickly, kind of with I see in the brief that it says that kind of the referendum did not include documentation to confirm AODA or PSI requirements. Is kind of as I understand it, kind of from what you said, the concern is more that it may not be compatible at all, not so much that the referendum question didn't include it. Is that kind of, am I understanding that right? Or is it kind of just that it wasn't included?
So we can endorse a question with those pieces unknown.
Okay.
So if I'll get to that in a second. We're just gonna start with the directors and then open it to the floor.
Okay, sure.
So if I could just re-ask the question, so because these assessments haven't been done, the board of directors cannot endorse this as they would.
So our criteria is that any fee cannot run contrary or violate university policy, and as the question reads as it was submitted to us, it violates university policy, so therefore we can't recommend it.
Okay, so if this fee was submitted with those assessments done, and therefore in compliance with that, make it something that we could endorse, and just asking that they are.
So that's one of the several concerns. I think we would still have concerns about the duplication of services. And the existing levies are already in place, the access to things, but we kind of have tiered concerns. Our first tier of concern is in relation to it violating policy and not being able to make a substantive judgment of that, but on the face of it, it violates university policy, which means we can't proceed. If that was addressed, we would still have subsequent concerns about some of the other things, primarily so with any fee that proposes an opt-out mechanism, there has to be consultation with, Registrar of Rail Services to make sure that the proposed opt-out mechanism can be facilitated by the university. So that's a piece that is not addressed. And then secondarily as well, you come to the duplication of services. So in 2021, the board rejected outright on the duplication of services.
Okay. Director Corey, does that answer your question?
Yeah, so basically just to summarize, is the proper due diligence wasn't done in the submission of this question.
For our purposes, we're looking at, does it meet the requirements that we publish for sponsorship? And for us, it doesn't meet the requirements that we have laid out.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Director Corey?
Yeah.
Okay. Are there further questions from the director? Okay, as I see none, we'll open the discussion up to the floor. Before you speak, please introduce yourself, your occupation, and if you have a conflict of interest in this matter.
Yes, I am Steve Herzog, and I am student ambassador for Student Support Services. And my main concern with this issue is, I think that we have not addressed the fact that we've looked into these services to see if they are eligible or not. And the second part that I want to address is the duplication of services. I, on behalf of the students that I've talked to and the people who are in this room today, have discussed that it is in fact not duplicating these services, and I would like to have a chance to go over that with you guys, if that's something that we can discuss.
We can discuss that first part, but it is very evident that the first criteria, which is about the technical requirements in regards to accessibility and the privacy, the privacy concerns, that's like a crucial piece
Of course.
of that. So it is, from my understanding, if there has been an assessment done, it hasn't been submitted. So my question to you is, I'd love to hear how you could address both of these concerns.
Well, that's just the first concern, obviously the fact that they might be eligible. What kind of things have been done to evaluate this eligibility?
So it's the onus of compliance is on the submitter. It is not, the onus of that is not on the non-tuition free protocol committee, a committee that me and the president of the student union both attended. This information, so for example, if you look at our agenda package, it says specifically under the external information technology and cloud services policy 9.5, subsection B, any contract or agreement entered into a third party to provide external IT to Laurier students must conform with the applicable laws, including requirements under the Accessibility of Ontarians with Disabilities Act and all applicable Laurier policies, including this policy 5.7, signing authority and procedures, and procurement and tendering guidelines. And then the second one, which is for all external IT hosting of internal and restricted data of privacy and security impact assessment must be completed as part of an assessment of privacy and security risks to ensure compliance with policy 9.4, information security policy. The second part of why this is so important is that cybersecurity threats are one of the largest institutional risks for the post-secondary education system. So the Laurier Senate and the Laurier Board of Governors takes that risk extremely seriously. So this is why, as part of the policies under this committee and other tendering processes, these assessments must be done ahead of time in order to determine eligibility. That
That's my question. My next question is, how do we go forward with getting those checks and, having the ability to understand the eligibility of the programs?
So,
What is the process that we have to go through in order to understand that?
that's,
We'd have to do some research on that.
Yeah. so if you'd like.
Sorry, can I just cut in quickly?
Sure.
Just, is it possible to get him to sit at the table or stand closer to the mic? Because he's coming out really distorted across the Zoom call.
If you could have a seat all the way over there close to that second owl, that would be appreciated. So, as a courtesy, for the efforts, of students like you and the other students for partaking in this referendum process, I would like you to submit, a follow-up question regarding the, eligibility of this fee for, so we're not even talking about duplication of services. This is not something that even the board, I believe the board can like rule on that matter, but for this matter, please send a question to me and to the, so that would be the SU board chair email, and then please, CC Director Muller, at imuller@wlu.ca. And we'll try to give you the best guidance that we can in order to, see what assessments, how the assessments would be done, and if the external, IT software company will be able to meet that to begin with, because that's an unknown, and that's a, from my perspective as chair, an institutional risk that is, very high for us. So,
And just to clarify, that's not in order to make the question compliant, it's more to like explore what you would need to go moving forward, that the deadline's passed for submission. Questions for.
Yes.
Right, so that would have to be passed next year, November 29th, I believe.
so referendum questions are set by, each board. So this board decided on November 29th would be the deadline. So it would normally be around that same time frame as has been historically done, through the previous boards. We don't know who the next board is going to be, so we don't know when the deadline would be, but usually at around mid to late November.
Okay. Then the earliest date to submit the referendum question would be next year around the same time.
Ian, is that true?
For the board sponsorship.
For the board sponsorship specifically, yes.
There would be no possible earlier date to discuss.
I believe the deadline has been crossed, and just from a pragmatic perspective, this is not an official ruling, but from a pragmatic perspective, these sorts of assessments I've done or I've had experience with take an extensive period of amount of time and money to be able to prove compliance. And the election is on January. When is the next election?
The voting is the 30th,
Yeah.
31st and 1st, but essentially the rationale for the timeline relates to the university billing cycle, so we have to set ancillary fees by a certain point in the winter time in order for that
To be
total fee package to be approved by the governors for fall assessment, so there's a lot, like, you have to work backwards, so that's why our deadlines are when they are, because the university has a timeline that they have to set their fee process in place just to assess fees for September 1st, 2020.
hypothetically, when referendum questions get passed, they then go to the non-tuition fee protocol committee and then go to the board of governors for approval. And, you know, the university works on a fiscal year, but also works on an academic year. And the vast majority, the vast majority of fees are charged in the fall semester. It takes a long time from April to September to be able to implement that from just a practical, like mechanical perspective.
Then I have another question then.
Go ahead.
Am I allowed to call on people in this room who may not be a student? Is that possible for me to be able to call on somebody?
I mean, no, there's no, I mean, within reason, you can bring somebody who could speak to these issues, but
Mhm.
like, these assessments would be a collaborative process in conjunction with the university, would not be something that
Right.
that the student union can facilitate.
Okay. So I understand that the cybersecurity is the main issue here, and I understand that's a really big issue for the university and something that you guys would like to look into very deeply. Is it possible to look into binding legal contracts to, essentially formulate
It is my professional opinion that we cannot bind ourselves to a contract with that much risk. Because hypothetically, if students were to get charged this fee without actually being able to access the service, it would be a, like, it would be a very, I don't know what the word to use, this would be an issue that would, the scale of the issue would be very large.
okay.
Director Corey, you have your hand up?
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize.
Okay, so do you have any? So that's the best that we can do. Please reach out to us. We will, our research, our governance stakeholder relations team can do a little bit of research to tell you what the process would look like. But in terms of material support, in order to be able to do that, that's the responsibility of the submitter. It is not the responsibility of the student union or its board of directors to be able to facilitate referendum questions.
Okay, okay. Could I ask one more question?
Please
If I
go.
could call on my associate who's here today to speak on behalf of student support as well?
Only if I could get speaking rights, I can answer the question for the policies.
If you'd like to have a seat there, we are like running a little long on time, so if you can, please state your name, your occupation, and if you have a conflict of interest.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Vishal Vinayak. My pronouns are she and her. I'm the head of community activities at Student Support. Thank you for letting me talk. I love the points that you brought up. I would like to address the two policies that you're talking about. So starting off with the AODA policy, we are AODA compliant. If you go to our website, studentsupport.ca, you can check that at the moment. And when it comes to your policies for security, in your policy, it doesn't really tell us how to get started. It just says that these are a list of assessments that needs to be passed once it's proposed. So the submitter wouldn't really know that if that should be included in the petition or even in the referendum question. And on top of it, with the existing partners that we have, all of these assessments do take place once the referendum is passed, because if it's not passed, there's no point of spending all that time and energy on finding out if it's accessible. So that happens once the students vote on it, it's passed. And then we work with the IT department to find out if it's accessible, which is again, way before when it's actually implemented, which is in September. So this process actually starts during the summer where we talk with the IT department. And if in case it does not go by, then we work on it.
Director Mueller, correct me if I'm wrong, but the referendum questions, in order for it to be approved by the board of directors, must be in adherence before approval.
Yeah,
Is that correct?
they require proactive assurance that they wouldn't contradict policies, and it's not student support that would be, because it's apps, each individual app. So the process is going to be related to the various services. There's integration with student data and privacy. So again, the process and the way that we have it set up is such that we're kind of evaluating the risk portfolio, but the policies are not all our policies. They're the institutional policies of the university. And we have risks associated with who we engage with, because we get our student data from the university. So if we're putting that data at risk, we're putting organizationally ourselves at risk as well, which is why we have to ensure compliance with the university policies.
So,
Can I answer that?
please go ahead, but we do have to end the conversation as we have to move into voting. We do have an in-camera session after this discussion.
For sure, it's just that I thought they were in a previous discussion, and when it comes to taking the information, it's like any other application, or even when students are signing up for an event, it's their name and email, and that's the most information that it takes. And when it comes to our privacy, we do not take any information or even store it. because it's like any student is consenting to use their application. Again, if I want the service, I will pay for it. If I don't want it, I don't have to pay for it. And then I will install it myself in my phone with all my consent and put in my name and email to just use the service. So when it comes to the things or the information they are gathering from the students, it's just like any other application. So I'm not sure what security comes into that place. And yeah, when it comes to AIDA, I would like to take just a minute of your time, if you can all go on the website, studentsupport.ca, and see it is compliant, so I'm not sure why has that been brought up.
So, I think you misunderstand. This has to be proactively shared with the board during the nomination, process ahead of time. So like, it is my understanding and previous precedent that compliance must be demonstrated ahead of time. So I'm just gonna use a previous example with the Nest. When we incorporated the Nest into, the student union, this was done before it was implemented. So, Director Corey, do you have any final comments?
Yeah, I mean, I wanna kind of, I guess I have one question, and this is more so towards Ian, but my understanding for the last sort of 10 minutes has been that this is a moot conversation, that we organizationally are not in a position where we can pass this. Is that correct?
That is our position.
And that is not gonna change regardless of the outcome of this conversation.
Not in my opinion.
Okay,
I'd like to propose a motion to reject this proposal, and as a personal note, ultimately kind of this is a conversation that we can't have at this level. And kind of the only step possible right now is to have this conversation for a referendum next year. Well, I know that's not what you want to hear, and I know that that's not a great answer. Kind of, as Ian just answered, that is the only option ahead of us.
so the motion was tabled. Do I have a seconder on the motion? Director Ellis? Any last further comments, questions to be made? You have your hand up still. Dr. Corey? Oh, yeah, okay. I guess please send an email to the student union board chair at www.ca and then CC Muller at www.ca. I can tell you that we'll do a little bit of research to try to guide you as to how these assessments need to be made ahead of time. But then that they have to wait for next year. Yeah. I'm gonna call it to a vote. All those in favor? No, all those in favor of approving the motion as presented. 1, 2, 3, Director Baldwin? Oh, yeah, there we go. Any abstentions on this matter? Any opposition to the motion? Okay, as I see none, the referendum question will not be supported by the student union board of directors. Please reach out to us and we'll try to.
Just last question before we leave. So, the student is supposed to come to you with services and then work with the IT department way before students even vote on the matter. I just want clarity because, you know, we normally don't get really passionate student leaders and, you know, they put in a lot of time. So I want to make sure that questions are answered before they even put more time, because again, I know it's exam season. So when you say reach out and we will figure out the process, right? On your policies, it's clearly stating that these are the assessments that need to be made. I just want to know who actually makes the assessment and who needs to be reached out to, so it's clear to them before we leave.
Director Muller, I believe that would be the IT services and register.
Yeah, so we'll have to do some, again, the like process of getting party technologies approved by the university is not an easy process, so.
It is
Yeah.
not a process that the student union, which is a separate non-for-profit corporation, independent of the university, can control.
Okay, so it's not a partnership, you do not reach out to them.
So we can do,
How does it work?
we'll look in to see what the next steps would be, but At this point, the students union is not in a position to partner on the initiative going forward, but we can give you some direction in terms of where you might make some inquiries going forward.
Okay, perfect, thanks.
Thank you so much for your time. Full. I forgot to mention during the adoption of the agenda, the meeting schedule will be discussed. Oh, no, we did discuss it earlier in the meeting. Laurier Ignites onto the Laurier Votes Resolve Night Transportation Director, President and CEO.
Did you guys have another question? Yeah, can you just leave? I just don't want to interrupt. while we're
Yeah.
on.
You're free to leave. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thanks. You want me to wait a minute? or-
No, please go ahead. You're very late.
Okay. So I just wanted to bring up the topic about coordinating transportation from the Brantford campus for, for election night. So this question is more so specifically geared towards the Brantford directors. If you guys think that there would be interest and uptake on your campus to coordinate a bus to come on election night.
Yes.
Okay.
Director Corey, Director Baldwin, do you agree with coordinating for us?
I kind of, the only recommendation that I would have would just be kind of the same thing that we've done when getting a bus before and just kind of making sure we have the numbers before we place the order. But kind of, if it's advertised, I don't know if it'll be a bus full, but I'm sure there will be some people interested.
I was just gonna say, Director Corey, it's with the lead time you need to book a bus, we won't really be able to confirm that they're confirm the numbers before. So that's why I'm leaning on you guys to figure out if there would be interest, because we would need to book it soon, probably before the holiday break. And obviously it wouldn't have numbers confirmed by then. That's kind of why I wanted to put out the feeler to see. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say that there are a couple other options too, so I know, I believe, VP Programming Services will be driving the foot van, and I believe last year we reimbursed some mileage for people carpooling down, so there are some other alternatives.
Yeah, Director Corey, my car is all.
Yeah,
over.
Just on that, sorry,
Brantford directors. So,
Yeah.
Director Corey.
sorry, just
Any
on
last
that, on the topic of the foot patrol vans, kind of with having my expectation honestly going in is that it won't break 10.
People?
Yeah, that kind of, cause what have we seen historically? Do you know off the top of your head, kind of what? Cause my understanding has been that it's mostly been individuals on the Waterloo campus who have gone to election night, unless they have a stake in it.
Yeah, like, if, I mean, if you think about the mileage, like one car to come to Brantford is around $50.
Yeah.
Whereas a bus is gonna cost us close to $500, so if what,
That break even would be like.
So then what I was leading to there would be, is it possible? Is it
Oh, yeah.
possible to grab the Waterloo foot van as well? Would that then maybe make more sense?
So we could explore, some variables then.
yeah. I think based on this conversation, it's probably safer to not book a bus and offer.
Yeah.
The gas reimbursement and potentially coordinate someone to drive the Waterloo foot patrol van.
Yeah,
I'd like,
Cause I know I'm still insured on the Brantford van and I assume that Coyle is coming up too, so.
okay. Director Muller,
Just the one thing that we've started doing organizationally is taking a look at the use of personal vehicles instead of relying on people renting vehicles for
Yeah.
these types of things, so maybe Megan and I can take it back and we can explore,
okay,
that option rather than a bus.
okay, yeah, we'll have a chat about it. I'd like to put forward a motion that the Board of Directors moves in camera. As soon as possible. Can I get a seconder on the motion? Director Russo, thank you for attending our meeting today. Okay, we'll do a quick, all those in favor?
Also just amend to include Ian.
Yeah, including Ian and the president. Yeah. Okay, the motion carries 0-0. Yeah, oh, no, well, you don't vote.